Hello and welcome to part 2 of my Teddy Ruxpin refurbishment and repair video. This is a 1985 Worlds of Wonder Teddy Ruxpin which takes full-size cassettes. In part 1 I replaced the pinch roller inside the cassette mechanism, and today I'll be trying to get the servos freed up for the eyes and the top and bottom jaw. In order to do this, I'm going to remove 4 screws that are holding the back plate on. I'm then going to cut the cord. There's some red thread that is the stitching up the back of his clothing here, and it runs up to the back of his neck to about this point. So using a flat blade screwdriver, I'm now going to try and very carefully lever this apart. And that's come off very easily. As you'll see, we've got a number of connectors onto the main board. We've got our power switch at the top, and we've got several wires going into the neck. We can see here there's connections for 3 servos. Yes, some versions of Teddy Ruxpin only have 2 servos, and I believe in those circumstances there's one servo operating the eyes and the second servo operates the bottom jaw, and the top jaw is driven by sort of mechanical coupling to the drive that's given to the bottom one. So let's find where the cord is easiest to cut. There we go. Now we peel the fabric on the head forward. First of all, I'm going to loosen the glue. All round. And by disconnecting this foam from the plastic faceplate, we should now be able to unclip it. Now I'm just making sure the mouth is closed. You should be able to see the clips here. 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. And then I'm just going to pull this face forward. It's also worth looking at the neck at this time, and we don't seem to have any splits. I've seen a few of these that have got some splits in there, and what I've done is I've used the sort of silicone sealant you'd use in bathrooms, and just smeared it sort of all around this area, and built up, let that dry overnight and then build up another layer, and by building up several layers we've managed to give it a bit more support. And that should give you something like this, which should last for many years to come. So I've put the cassette on play. I've done it at minimum volume because I don't really want to infringe anybody's copyright here. But what I'm trying to do is, we've got these sort of yellow circles which are making contact with the pieces that drive the mouth. And also we can see the one up here for the eyes, and there's one on the other side here which you can't see, but it's on the back of this piece, which is doing the top jaw. So all I'm going to be trying to do is to be giving these a wiggle and they are quite stuck. They do feel fairly solid. And to try to G them back into life while the cassette's running, it might take a little while. One of the things you can do is actually push these right, disconnect the spring and push these right out, and then you can manipulate them by hand a lot easier. I'm going to persist without actually doing that for now, just to see. Oh, okay, I managed to move that one round. We just need to it's a bit screechy, but that is now working. I wonder why it's so screechy. I believe the eyes just moved on their own. I'm now going to concentrate on this servo that's driving the top jaw. I'm going to switch him off for a second. I'm going to try and push this middle one out and do this one by hand. One of the things I've found is that these springs are very, very easy to lose. So I need to be quite careful in what I do with this after I take it off. Oh, okay, that's moving very easily. I need to get these wires out of the way if I can. If I just tuck them under that capacitor. Okay. So that's freed up that whole servo. Let's put this back on again. Now I should be able to apply a reasonable amount of force to try and get this turning. Ooh. Push this back into position. There we go. And this is going to be floppy until I replace the spring. One of the things is I've lost several of these springs with them zooming across the room as I try to apply pressure to actually get them in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a small piece of cotton around the centre of this and then cut that when I've finished and it's actually in place, because these are very, very difficult to find when they've pinged 20 feet across the room. Go. With that in place, I now cut the cotton. So that's not needed anymore. Those mouth servos are screeching and making a bit of a racket. At this point I don't know exactly what to do about this. I do have another Teddy Ruxpin I can use as a donor. I very carefully unstuck just by going along the edge with my fingers, the foam from the back of the head to take that off. There are two clips holding the neck together. One of them is there, and as you can see it's very easy to remove. There's another one down here which slight accident, but yeah, it's come off, and that means that the neck can be pushed forward and can lift out. It looks like the servos, or the connections to them inside this board, are actually numbered, so 1, 2, 3. Presumably that's top, middle and bottom. So I'm left with another Teddy Ruxpin to make a donation. I'm going to take 2 of the servo motors out of this one. This one is actually working quite well. The only thing is it's got a slightly damaged bottom jaw, and the bottom jaw won't actually remove. On this one it will slide right out and I could swap them over, but unfortunately this one won't come out. So that leaves me with the rather awkward situation that I need to clean up the fur on this one, and then I'm going to swap the 2 motors for the 2 motors in that one there. So over to my favourite cleaning solution, which happens to be roughly 2/3 water and 1/3 isopropyl alcohol. This should be alright on my hands, provided I wash them off afterwards. So I'm going to get these mouth parts nice and soaked. And just work that in, and then with a fresh piece of towel you need to remove as much of that moisture as possible. So I'm just going to use this to soak the bottom jaw. I don't know, that looks a little bit cleaner to me. That's the spring removed. Hopefully now, there we go. Should be able to separate this servo. Well, I've decided to take the back off these donor servos and just give them a bit of a clean in the for these carbon contacts before we start. So I'm using isopropyl alcohol. I'm swabbing that little contact on the surface, and there are some areas on the metal here where we get some contact from. I'll just clean the that carbon piece with a dry tip, and I think this is all evaporated. There we go. And these little contacts on here as well, let's get those clean. And I'm just drying everything off with a Q-tip cotton bud as I go. Okay, so I've just cleaned the surface of that with the wet end, and then I'm wiping everything off with the dry end. And I think we can reassemble that one. I don't think I've left any moisture in there. And there's one more set of carbon contacts I need to clean while I'm here. I've just removed these wires which were secured in with hot melt glue, which we can put some fresh glue back later. If we take the screw off the front of there, we should have underneath, be able to lift this off and lift off this little plastic film. So I'm moving most of this out of the way just to clean as much of the carbon track as I can, and that's looking pretty good. So let's put that back together. There is a little recess in here which matches the cutouts on the side of that. There we go. I'll put the screw back in the centre. We need to position this back where it was, and I'm going to get the hot melt glue gun to secure everything back in place. I don't know if you can see my freshly glued wires. There we go. Well, it's now the next morning. I had to rush to get this back together because it's going to be given as a gift to somebody on a particular day. What I ultimately ended up doing was replacing all 3 servos in the head with ones from a donor bear. This is now working quite well. So after that I did the thing of clipping the faceplate back on, pulling the fur back over the head, stitching down the back here and the material at the base of the neck. It was then a case of positioning all the cloth so it aligned with where the back plate needed to push in. So I pushed that in, clipped it in because it's got these little clips around the edges. That's what we actually loosened with a screwdriver when we first took it apart. So having pushed those in, it was then a case of fitting the screws, 2 in there and 2 just inside the battery cover. I've drilled the battery cover, put a DC power socket in there, so I can now plug in a power adapter. We've got crocodile clips still inside and they're just wired to the back of the DC socket. So that will now work powered from the mains. Well, powered from 6 volts, powered from the mains. So if I put one of his tapes in, hopefully.
It would probably be sufficient to say, wonderful inventor.
We also discovered the gimmick is modest.
We told Gimmick that we were on a journey to find a treasure. He said that one of his latest inventions might be very useful.
As you can see, that's a lot quieter than the original servos were. And this one is now fully working, and this will be given to somebody who will, I'm sure, give it a very loving home. So, thank you for watching. If you like the video, please subscribe or give it the thumbs up. And this is Robin from Workshop 1138 signing off for now.